Nina Foster stood in the rain outside the Sterling Art Gallery, watching through the window as wealthy collectors admired paintings she could only dream of creating. Her worn canvas bag hung heavy on her shoulder, filled with sketches she hoped someone might notice. At 26, she had spent 3 years trying to make it as an artist in the city, working double shifts at a coffee shop just to afford her tiny studio apartment. She didn't know that inside the gallery, Tyler Blackstone was watching her. The 32-year-old CEO of Blackstone Industries had built an empire in technology and real estate. But tonight he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about the clause in his grandfather's will that haunted him like a ghost. The old man had written it before passing away 6 months ago. Tyler must marry before his 33rd birthday, which was only 4 weeks away, or lose controlling interest in the company to his ruthless cousin, Victoria Blackstone. Victoria had been circling like a vulture, waiting for Tyler to fail. She had already started spreading rumors, planting doubts in the board members' minds. Tyler had fought too hard to let everything crumble now. But finding a wife in 4 weeks felt impossible. Every woman he knew wanted something from him. Money, status, connections. He couldn't trust any of them with his empire or his life. Then he saw Nina through the window. Something about her caught his attention. Maybe it was the way she stood in the rain without caring that her jacket was soaked. Maybe it was the determination in her eyes as she clutched that bag. Or maybe it was simply that she had no idea who he was. The arrangement begins 3 days later. Nina received a phone call that changed her life. A smooth voice introduced himself as Robert Chen, attorney for Tyler Blackstone. He wanted to meet with her about a business proposal. Nina almost hung up, thinking it was a scam, but curiosity won. She agreed to meet at a downtown office. The meeting room was all glass and steel, making Nina feel small in her thrift store dress. Then Tyler walked in, and the air seemed to shift. He was tall, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. His gray suit probably cost more than her yearly rent, but his eyes were what stopped her. Cold, calculating, yet carrying a weight she recognized. Loneliness. Tyler got straight to the point. He needed a wife for 1 year. It would be purely business. She would live in his home, attend social events, and play the role of devoted spouse. In return, he would pay her $500,000. Half up front, half when the year ended. Plus, he would fund her art career, giving her a studio space and connections to top galleries. Nina's hands trembled as she processed his words. $500,000 would solve every problem she had. She could help her sick mother get the treatment she needed. She could finally focus on her art without worrying about rent. But marrying a stranger felt wrong, even if it was just pretend. She asked him why he chose her. Tyler leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Because you don't want anything from me. You didn't even know who I was. That makes you different. That makes you safe. Nina should have walked away. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she thought about her mother's medical bills piling up. She thought about the eviction notice on her apartment door. She thought about all the years she had struggled and fought and barely survived. Maybe this was her chance. Maybe 1 year of pretending was worth a lifetime of freedom. She looked into Tyler's cold eyes and nodded. When do we start? The loveless wedding. The wedding happened 1 week later in a private ceremony at City Hall. No guests, no flowers, no music. Just 2 strangers signing papers while a judge read vows that felt hollow. Nina wore a simple white dress she bought on sale. Tyler wore another expensive suit, his face showing no emotion as he slid a platinum ring onto her finger. The ring was beautiful, but felt heavy, like a chain. When the judge told Tyler to kiss his bride, he gave Nina a brief, cold peck on the lips. It lasted barely a second, but Nina felt the chill of it down to her bones. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was a business transaction. They drove to Tyler's mansion in silence. The estate sat on 5 acres outside the city, surrounded by iron gates and security cameras. The house itself looked like something from a movie, all marble columns and massive windows. Nina had never seen so much wealth in one place. She felt like an imposter walking through the front door. Tyler's housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, showed Nina to her room. It was actually a suite, bigger than Nina's entire apartment had been. The bed was enormous, covered in silk sheets. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch forever. It was beautiful and terrifying. Mrs. Patterson explained the house rules in a gentle voice. Tyler kept to himself most days, working in his home office or traveling for business. Nina was free to use any space except his private study. Meals would be prepared by the chef. If she needed anything, just ask. After Mrs. Patterson left, Nina sat on the edge of that huge bed and let the reality sink in. She was married to a man she didn't know, living in a house that didn't feel like home, playing a role she didn't understand yet. She pulled out her phone and called her mother, telling her the medical bills would be paid soon. Her mother's grateful tears made the hollow feeling in Nina's chest hurt a little less. That night, Nina couldn't sleep. She wandered down to the kitchen around midnight, hoping to find tea. Instead, she found Tyler sitting at the island, staring at a glass of whiskey. He looked up when she entered, surprise flashing across his face before the cold mask returned. "Sorry," Nina whispered. "I couldn't sleep." Tyler gestured to the seat across from him. "Neither can I." They sat in awkward silence, two strangers bound by a contract, both wondering what they had gotten themselves into. Nina noticed the tension in Tyler's shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes. This wasn't just business for him either. He was fighting to keep something he had built, just like she was fighting to survive. Maybe, Nina thought, they weren't so different after all. The first month of their arrangement passed like a strange dream. Nina and Tyler lived as polite strangers, crossing paths at breakfast and formal dinners, but rarely speaking beyond necessary pleasantries. Tyler left for work before dawn and returned late at night, burying himself in meetings and contracts. Nina spent her days in the art studio he had set up for her in the East Wing, painting away her confusion about this bizarre new life. But small moments started to change things. One morning, Nina came down to find Tyler in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee and failing miserably. The expensive machine was hissing and spitting water everywhere. She couldn't help but laugh at the sight of this powerful CEO looking utterly defeated by a coffee maker. "Here, let me help," she said, stepping beside him. Her mother had worked in a cafe for years, teaching Nina every trick. Within minutes, she had 2 perfect cups ready. Tyler took his gratefully, and for the first time, she saw him smile. It was small, barely there, but it transformed his entire face. "Thank you," he said softly. "I usually have my assistant handle this at the office." "You can't drink coffee without knowing how to make it," Nina teased. "That's a crime." Something shifted after that morning. Tyler started joining her for breakfast more often. Their conversations remained surface level at first, discussing weather and current events. But gradually, they began sharing more. Tyler talked about the pressure of running his company, the constant battles with his cousin Victoria. Nina spoke about her art, her dreams of having a real exhibition someday, the charity gala 6 weeks into their marriage. Tyler announced they would attend the annual Blackstone Foundation charity gala. It would be their first public appearance as a married couple, and Victoria would be watching for any sign their marriage was fake. Nina felt her stomach twist with nerves. The night of the gala, Mrs. Patterson helped Nina get ready. The dress Tyler had sent was stunning, a deep emerald gown that flowed like water. When Nina descended the staircase, Tyler was waiting in the foyer, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked up and froze, his eyes widening. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice rougher than usual. The cold businessman mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something warmer underneath. The gala was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, the ballroom glittering with crystal chandeliers and decorated with thousands of white roses. Nina felt overwhelmed by the crowd of wealthy elite, all dressed in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. She gripped Tyler's arm tightly as they entered, trying not to stumble in her unfamiliar heels. Tyler introduced her to what felt like hundreds of people, each one studying Nina with curious eyes. She could feel their judgment, their whispers. Who was this unknown woman who had captured the heart of Tyler Blackstone? She forced herself to smile, to play the role of loving wife, even as anxiety twisted in her chest. Then Victoria appeared, gliding across the ballroom like a predator. She was beautiful in a cold, sharp way, her blonde hair perfectly styled, and her red dress making a bold statement. Her smile was all teeth as she greeted them. "Tyler, darling, and this must be your little bride?" Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How quaint. Tell me, Nina, where did you two meet? Tyler has been so secretive about your whirlwind romance." Nina felt Tyler tense beside her, but she kept her smile steady. "We met at an art gallery. I was showing my work, and Tyler couldn't take his eyes off my paintings." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "How romantic. Though I must say, it all happened so quickly. One might almost think there was some other reason for such a hasty marriage." The implication hung in the air like poison. Before Nina could respond, Tyler pulled her closer, his arm wrapping around her waist, in a gesture that looked protective and possessive. "When you know, you know," Tyler said coolly. "I don't waste time on uncertainty. Nina is my wife, and that's all that matters." Victoria's smile tightened, but she backed off, drifting away to spread her venom elsewhere. Nina released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tyler kept his arm around her waist as they moved through the crowd, and she noticed he didn't let go even when Victoria was gone. A moment of truth later that evening, they escaped to the hotel's rooftop terrace for air. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like fallen stars. Nina leaned against the railing, grateful for the cool breeze after the stuffy ballroom. "You did well in there," Tyler said, standing beside her. "Victoria is like a shark. She smells blood in the water." Nina turned to look at him. His tie was loosened now, his usual perfect composure slightly undone. In the moonlight he looked younger, less guarded. She felt a strange pull in her chest, something she had been trying to ignore for weeks. "Can I ask you something?" Nina said quietly. "Why did you really choose me?" The truth this time, Tyler was silent for a long moment, his jaw working as he struggled with something internal. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. "Because you reminded me of someone I used to be. Before the money, before the company, before all of this. I saw you standing in that rain, holding on to your dreams even though the world kept trying to beat you down. You had hope in your eyes. I lost that a long time ago." Nina's heart ached at his words. She reached out, placing her hand over his on the railing. Tyler looked down at their touching hands, surprise flickering across his face. "You're not as cold as you pretend to be," Nina said softly. "I see the way you help Mrs. Patterson when her arthritis flares up. The way you donated anonymously to the Children's Hospital last week. You still have hope, Tyler. You just buried it under all that armor." Tyler turned his hand over, his fingers intertwining with hers. The gesture felt intimate, real in a way their entire fake marriage hadn't been. He looked at her with those gray eyes that weren't quite so cold anymore. "You're dangerous, Nina Foster," he whispered. "You make me want things I swore I'd never want again." The air between them crackled with tension. Nina felt drawn to him like gravity, her heart pounding as he leaned closer. His free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. When his lips met hers, it wasn't the cold peck from their wedding. This kiss was soft, searching, full of a longing that took her breath away. They pulled apart slowly, both breathing harder. Tyler's forehead rested against hers, his eyes closed. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he murmured. "This was supposed to stay business." Nina's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "I know." But neither of them pulled away. They stood there under the stars, hands clasped, both terrified of the real feelings blooming between them. The contract said 1 year. But Nina was starting to realize that some things couldn't be controlled by paperwork and signatures. Love didn't follow rules. The growing connection, the weeks following the gala, brought subtle changes to their household. Tyler started working from home more often, finding excuses to pass by Nina's studio. He would pause in the doorway, watching her paint with an expression she couldn't quite read. Sometimes he would come in, sitting quietly while she worked, his presence comforting rather than intrusive. Nina began leaving small gestures around the house. She learned Tyler's favorite coffee blend and had it ready each morning. She noticed he rubbed his temples when stressed and started keeping aspirin in the kitchen. When he worked late, she would bring him dinner. Staying to talk about nothing and everything. One rainy afternoon, Tyler found Nina in the library, curled up with a book. He sat down beside her, and she instinctively shifted closer, her head ending up on his shoulder. They stayed like that for hours, reading in comfortable silence. The storm raging outside while warmth grew between them inside. Mrs. Patterson noticed the changes, her knowing smile appearing whenever she saw them together. The house itself seemed lighter, as if the walls sensed the ice finally melting. But in the back of Nina's mind, a clock was ticking. They were approaching month 3 of their arrangement. 9 months left on the contract. 9 months until Tyler no longer needed a wife, until she would take her money and leave. The thought made her chest tight with a pain she didn't want to acknowledge. She was falling in love with her husband, her fake husband, and she had no idea if he felt the same way, or if this was all still just business to him with some pleasant complications. Everything changed on a cold November evening. Nina had been exploring the mansion, still finding new rooms even after months of living there. She stumbled upon a door she had never noticed before, tucked away behind a bookshelf in the library. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she pushed it open. Inside was a small room filled with photographs and documents. Her heart stopped when she recognized faces in the pictures. There was a young woman who looked strikingly similar to Nina, with the same brown hair and bright eyes. The woman was laughing in photo after photo. Always beside a teenage boy Nina realized was a young Tyler. Her hands shook as she picked up a framed photograph. The woman wore a simple dress, paint stains on her hands, standing in front of an easel. Written on the back in faded ink were the words, "Sophie Foster, my best friend, my light. Never forget. Sophie Foster." Nina's older sister, who had died 8 years ago in a car accident. The room spun around her as pieces clicked into place. Tyler hadn't chosen her randomly at that gallery. He had known exactly who she was. Her sister and Tyler had been friends, maybe more than friends, before Sophie's death. Nina had been only 18 when it happened, too consumed by grief to pay attention to her sister's life details. She heard footsteps and turned to find Tyler standing in the doorway, his face pale. He had clearly been looking for her, and now his secret was exposed. "You knew," Nina said, her voice breaking. "This whole time you knew who I was. You knew about Sophie." Tyler stepped into the room, his hands raised as if approaching a wounded animal. "Nina, please let me explain." "Explain what?" Nina's anger erupted, fueled by hurt and betrayal. "That you married me because I look like my dead sister? That this entire thing was some sick way to replace her? Was any of it real, Tyler? Or was I just a ghost you were trying to bring back to life?" The truth, revealed Tyler's composure, crumbled completely. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red with unshed tears. "Sophie was my best friend," he began, his voice raw. "We grew up together. She was the only person who saw past the money and pressure. She wanted to be an artist, just like you. We made plans to open a gallery together after college, to change the world with beauty and creativity." He stood, walking to the wall of photographs. His finger traced Sophie's face in one of them. "Then she died in that accident, and a part of me died with her. I threw myself into business, building the company, pushing everyone away. I became the cold person you met 6 months ago. I convinced myself I didn't need anyone." Nina's anger wavered as she saw the genuine pain on his face. "But why didn't you tell me? Why the deception?" Tyler turned to face her. "Because I was a coward. When I saw you at that gallery, it felt like fate was giving me a second chance. Not to replace Sophie, never that, but to honor her memory by helping her little sister. I knew about your struggles because I had been keeping tabs on Sophie's family over the years, making sure you were okay." He took a step closer, his voice pleading. "The marriage started as a way to solve both our problems. You needed money. I needed a wife. But I swear, Nina, what happened between us was real. You are not your sister. You are your own person, vibrant and strong and beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with Sophie. Nina felt tears streaming down her face. How can I trust that? How can I know you're not just seeing her when you look at me? The choice Tyler closed the distance between them, gently taking her hands. Because when I kiss you, I think about your laugh, not hers. When I watch you paint, I admire your style, which is completely different from Sophie's. When you challenge me, when you make me smile, when you break down my walls, that's all you. Nina, you made me feel alive again, not because you remind me of the past, but because you showed me there could be a future. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Inside was a new ring, different from the cold platinum band she wore. This one was rose gold with a small sapphire, simple and personal. This belonged to my mother, Tyler said softly. She gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to someone I truly loved. Nina, our contract says 9 more months, but I don't want a contract anymore. I don't want a business arrangement or a fake marriage. I want you, really want you, if you'll have me. Nina stared at the ring, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from more hurt. But another part, the part that had been falling in love with this complicated, damaged, beautiful man, wanted to take the leap. I need time, she whispered. This is too much, Tyler. You kept something huge from me. Even if your feelings are real, I need to process this. Tyler nodded, closing the ring box. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting. No more secrets, Nina. I promise you that. Victoria's final move the next morning. Nina woke to find Tyler gone and a note on her nightstand. Emergency at the office. Victoria called a board meeting. She's making her move. His handwriting was rushed, stressed. Nina knew what this meant. Victoria had somehow discovered something or fabricated evidence to challenge Tyler's marriage. She dressed quickly and called the car, determination replacing her confusion from the night before. Whatever her feelings about Tyler's deception, she wouldn't let Victoria destroy him. The Blackstone Industries tower loomed over downtown,
all glass and steel reaching toward the sky.
Nina had never been to Tyler's office before. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless, her heart pounding as she tried to figure out what to say. She burst into the boardroom. Just as Victoria was presenting a report to the assembled board members, Tyler sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of controlled fury. And as you can see, Victoria was saying, there are significant questions about the authenticity of Mr. Blackstone's marriage. My investigators found that his wife was paid a substantial sum before the wedding. This suggests the marriage is fraudulent, which violates the terms of the will. Nina walked straight to Tyler's side, her head held high despite every eye turning to her. She took his hand, feeling him tense in surprise. You're right, Nina said clearly, her voice steady. Tyler did pay me. We started as a business arrangement because he needed a wife and I needed help. But that's not the whole story. She turned to face the board, feeling Tyler's shocked gaze on her. Over these months, I've gotten to know the real Tyler Blackstone. Not the CEO you all see, but the man underneath. The one who works himself to exhaustion because he cares about every person this company employs. The one who donates millions to charity anonymously because he doesn't want recognition. The one who honored his grandfather by trying to follow the will's terms, even when it cost him his pride. Nina's voice grew stronger. Yes, we married for business, but we stayed together. We built something real together because we fell in love. I don't care about his money or his company. I care about him. And if that's not enough for you, then maybe you should ask yourselves what really matters. Following the letter of a law or honoring its spirit? The room fell silent. Victoria's face had gone red with fury. Tyler stood, his hand squeezing Nina's. My wife is right, he said, his voice firm. My grandfather wanted me to find someone to share my life with, to stop being so alone. Nina gave me that. She made me remember what it means to trust someone, to love someone. The marriage may have started as strategy, but it became real. If the board cannot accept that, then I will step down. But I will not let anyone question Nina's place in my life. Love wins. The board members exchanged glances. Finally, the eldest member, Gerald Richardson, stood. He had known Tyler's grandfather for 50 years. The will's purpose was to ensure Tyler had a partner. Someone to steady him and remind him that life is more than business, Gerald said slowly. From what I've witnessed today, that goal has been achieved. The young lady showed great courage coming here, and Tyler showed his priorities by choosing her over the company. I vote to uphold Tyler's position. One by one, the other board members nodded their agreement. Victoria slammed her portfolio shut and stormed from the room, defeated. Nina felt Tyler's arm wrap around her waist, pulling her close. After the board dismissed, they stood alone in the now empty conference room. Tyler turned Nina to face him, his eyes searching hers. "You came for me," he said wonderingly. "After everything I kept from you, you still came." Nina smiled, touching his face gently. "I was angry, and I'm still processing the Sophie thing. But I meant what I said in there. I love you, Tyler, the real you, not some ghost from the past. We have things to work through, but I want to try. If you're willing to be completely honest from now on," Tyler pulled out the ring box from yesterday, opening it to reveal his mother's ring. "No more secrets. No more walls. Just us, building something real together." He slid the ring onto her finger beside the platinum band. It fit perfectly. Their kiss was different from all the others. Not cold like their wedding, not tentative like the gala, but full and certain and true. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through happy tears. The new beginning, 6 months later. Nina stood in the Sterling Art Gallery, the same place where Tyler had first seen her through the window. But now, the gallery walls were covered with her paintings, solo exhibition that art critics were already calling brilliant. Tyler stood beside her, his arm around her waist, beaming with pride as collectors examined each piece. Mrs. Patterson had flown in for the opening, tearfully hugging them both. Even Gerald Richardson attended, delighted to see Tyler so happy. Victoria had left the company entirely, taken a position overseas where her ambitions could be properly channeled. That night, as they walked through their mansion, which finally felt like home, Nina paused by the hidden room where she had discovered the truth. Tyler had transformed it into a memorial for Sophie, but added new photos beside the old ones. Pictures of Tyler and Nina laughing, painting together, building their life. "She would have loved you," Tyler said softly, looking at Sophie's photograph. "And she would have been happy that we found each other." Nina leaned into him. "I think she'd be proud of both of us. For healing, for taking chances, for letting love win." As they climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the platinum wedding band on Nina's finger caught the light beside the rose gold ring. 2 rings, representing 2 phases of their relationship. One born from necessity, one born from truth. Together, they told the story of how a business deal became the greatest love of their lives. Tyler had married her for business. But that night he gave her his mother's ring. He revealed his real motive, a heart that had been waiting to love again, and a soul that had finally found its match.